So I was saying the heart, doing a lot of work on that heart chakra, that bridge between the lower and upper energy centers. It's very hard to stay open and connected when you've, really suffered some deep trauma. So, and some of this can be done, some of that can be done on your own. But a lot of times having an expert to guide you is, really helpful. And I do find that you will move through it a little bit more quickly if you have a safety net.
Wow, thank you. Wow. And you gave us a lot of information, which is actually very, I think, very informative. Not just informative, it's also very helpful to both men and women, because sometimes most of us, not only a certain sex, we are in denial. Even if you're going through something, it takes us long to actually admit that we are going through something.
Yes.
So what advice you would give to the third party like us? If we
the heroes are always the most concerning. The heroes that do not know how to ask help. And I was one of them. It's usually the strongest people that are suffering the most, I have found. And so my advice to them is there's two choices. You can continue to suffer and exhaust yourself doing it alone. Whether there's that martyr complex, I'm doing it all by myself, or such a fear of looking weak or disappointing people. And I think that's very common. What's going to happen with that type A, very young person, is they're going to exhaust themselves until they get into the hands of the right help. And it takes so much more strength to say, I need help. And also for people who are more private and have trouble with vulnerability, remember, you can get help and no one needs to know. You don't have to post it on social media. You don't need to tell all your friends. No one needs to know. You can get yourself help privately and still be perceived, if you're really holding on to that perception. And I'm not saying that arrogantly, because I understand if you're the VP of a huge corporation and you're overseeing hundreds of employees and you are the glue holding everything together, you falling apart is not very ideal. But you falling apart and suffering in silence is also not ideal. So those type of people really have to learn to, kind of put the oxygen mask on first. And again, it can be done privately. This doesn't need to be, not everybody needs to know what you're doing. I put myself more out there because it just happens to be the line of work. And I feel like sharing my personal experience is more helpful. I'm also in this, I'm in the mental health field, so it only helps my profession, but it could hinder somebody's profession. Okay. So, don't suffer in silence. Please ask for help. And if you need to do it privately, do it privately, but don't suffer, because you're not helping anyone around you, especially if children are involved.
Yeah, true. So how can we help somebody that's going through trauma, someone that still does not want to open up? They prefer living in silence, and I think they're so used to living that way. Maybe it's also generation to generation. So how would you actually advise us to help that person without
the hardest lesson that I've ever had to learn is sitting back and watching people that I love suffer. And unfortunately, sometimes it may come to that. What you can do, what I do, and what I've been trained to do is saying to that person, I feel like you're really suffering. I would love to, I'm here, I'd love to listen. I'd love for you to talk. I'd love to listen. I'd love for you to share whatever you need. I'm here for you. I think that reassurance on occasion is really helpful, because because they're setting a boundary, right? They're setting a boundary. They have a wall up. That's their boundary. And we can only honor someone's boundaries. Now, if suicide is involved and a person's suicidal, that's a different story. Confidentiality, all those rules go out the window. But if they just have this boundary and you really can't break it, because healing is a choice, and getting help is a choice, and getting well is a choice. But what you can do is let them know that you're there. You're not going anywhere, because even if they're not saying it, it is so helpful to know that you have someone on your side should you need that help and support. And when that person's ready, they will. They will. It's been my experience. I've seen it very often, especially lately. Just every once in a while, give that reminder. Let them know. Sometimes I actually would leave resources on my friend's coffee table, like a pamphlet, and not say anything before I was leaving. I would just put it on the table and walk out, and I would get a text or phone call. Did you leave that there? Well, I just thought, it would be good that you knew that these people existed and that you had somewhere to go. You can do something as subtle as that. But you can't force someone into recovery. You can't force someone into wellness. You can't force someone into healing, but you can live by example. And that's our most powerful tool, is really being a role model and walking the talk, and not just, airtime, not just lecturing. I have two teenage daughters, and sometimes I'm guilty of lecturing. And so I've been put in my place often enough to know that lecturing does not work. But then they'll watch me and they'll say, well, I saw you do that, and that worked really well for you. I think I'm going to try it.
Very, very good advice. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So we actually, oh yes, before we come to the end, can you please give us some tools to help us heal from trauma? A lot of us actually have trauma and we don't even know it's trauma.
Yes.
Because it actually became a normality. So what advice do you have for us to heal from?
Feel your feelings, feel your feelings, feel your feelings. It's very easy to stuff it down with alcohol, drugs, sex, food, socializing, keeping busy. Feel your feelings, cry in the car, cry in the shower, cry in the bathroom. If steal those moments and let it out. Beat the crap out of a pillow. I'm very big into somatic work. Go punch a punching bag, take a bat to a pillow. I worked with a psychotherapist in Canada, and he's like, you need to beat up your pillow. And I was like, you're right. The best advice I got sometimes working through trauma was people giving me permission to rage and be angry and feel, but you had to get it out. So, go to the batting cages or go for a run. So expressing it somatically is one of the best things that you could do for yourself. And that way we're not hurting ourselves and we're not hurting other people, whether it's physically or with our words. Cognitive behavioral therapy is by far the best form of therapy for trauma. I've seen DBT used in REBT, but CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, literally rewires the brain. It takes neuroplasticity into consideration. We now know that our brain is not this hard, glob in our head, but it's actually malleable, like Play-Doh. Taking someone out of the environment. So if you have the ability to move or escape or quit the job, I'm not telling anyone to quit their job, and I'm not telling anyone to leave their home in an abusive situation, taking the risk of incurring more harm. Please have a strategy and a plan and work with a licensed professional. But if you can take yourself out of the environment, a lot of trauma is environmental. Get that person out of the abusive home, put them into a loving home. You have a whole different experience now. And also, Bessel van der Kolk is like the godfather of trauma. His book, The Body Keeps the Score, I recommend everybody read it if you're interested in this and you want to go deeper, especially if you're a yoga practitioner or in the mental health field and you haven't read it yet. And Bessel did a lot of studies, and it is proven scientifically that yoga heals trauma better than any form of therapy or any pharmaceutical on the market. And you will read that in this book. It's a fact. Now, I say yoga and a combination of, I'm not just saying yoga, but yoga is that wildly therapeutic because it's so deeply somatic. It's so nurturing and nourishing to the nervous system. And we know that we want to get people out of their primal brain and back to that prefrontal cortex and into the rational brain. And don't beat yourself up. I mean, it is so easy to dive into self-deprecation because so many of us as trauma survivors, we've been blamed for so long that we are convinced it was us. And trauma is never that person's fault. We were at the mercy and the hands of people who didn't know any better. Again, mostly generational. So you'll see that cycle in your own family dynamic. It's never your fault. And if you're a trauma survivor in terms of a natural disaster or even a death in the family and feeling like it should have been me, kind of the same premise still holds to that, trauma survivor. I'm feeling like it should have been me and it shouldn't have been the other people. Take a deep breath, connect with your breath. Your breath is your anchor. It keeps you grounded and present. And know that help is out there, and be big enough to ask for help. And stay the course and don't give up. Please don't give up, because it's usually when it gets the hardest and you feel like you're going to break and you can't take it anymore, that you're, ready for the breakthrough.
Wow, thanks. So we actually have quite a few people watching, and hopefully they're also taking your advice. But before I go to the questions, there's just one question on our page. I just want to recap everything that you mentioned. I actually never take a lot of notes because whatever you were saying was actually quite interesting for me. And I thought we rather just go with the flow, and instead of jotting everything down, we also need to feel, like you just mentioned. So Kerry, I lost you. Oh, you're there. Okay. So basically you mentioned that trauma is emotional, and a lot of humans, as a human nature, I think we choose to suffer. It's a suffering experience. And so we need to work internally in order for that to actually show outside, whether it could be our outer appearance or the people that we attract, the people and the situations that we attract in our lives.
Yes.
And I do agree with that, because we actually manifest a lot in our minds before it actually manifests out there.
Yes.
So we owe it to ourselves to delve within. And even with my yoga students, I also tell them the same thing. And I actually love Shavasana because that's the time you actually get them to relax and let go.
Yes,
absolutely. We tend to hold on to a lot, and we don't know when to let go. And we even take on problems that is not actually ours. So we just need to let go, release.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the question. I'll actually mention the lady's name. Her name is Bhakti. She says, she asks, how do you dive deeper, especially when you're much older and it's difficult to even want to go to that place?
Bhakti is the name, right?
Yeah, Bhakti.
Yes. Thank you for that question. It actually does, in my experience, I find it does get harder as you get older. So I commend you for even just being on here and being interested. I think that's a huge step. And you have the awareness. I would actually recommend journaling. I would recommend writing her feelings down, setting a timer. So she's not pressured. Like, I don't like that, like, fill 5 pages or write for a half an hour, but I like setting a timer in the beginning for a small amount of time, because I think she'll be very surprised how much she gets down on paper in, say, 5 or 10 minutes. I think journaling is one of the most private and easeful ways. And if writing isn't her thing, pictures. She can even put pictures of family members and write like a little, this is how you made me feel, like forgiveness work. This is how you made me feel. I might not forgive you now, but I want to forgive you, right? That's step 1. Or the picture of a family member and I don't like you at all. I don't know if I'm ever going to like you. And that's it for that day. That's trauma work. You don't have to forgive right away. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be all perfect. You know, I have one journal, that's my not so nice journal. I don't always say a lot of nice things in that journal. But what I do try to do is go to my other journal of what I'm grateful for, what I have in my life, what I have overcome. Because I do think it's important sometimes to express the other stuff. That's part of the somatic work because trauma is so stuck in our cellular memory. And Bhakti, please let us know if you do try the journaling, how it works for you. And for her being older, just talking it out to a trusted friend, someone who's empathetically listening, not surface level listening, you know, not listening and running their own tape in their head, but standing in the presence of someone where you know you're being heard and validated. Yeah, I mean, I think those are great first steps for her. And I really commend Bhakti for even taking the steps because some people just feel like, well, it's just too late, you know, I'm this age and why even bother?
I actually like that because I feel when we delve within, you actually get to know your real self better.
Yeah,
And
it's an intimate practice.
Exactly. And when you're doing it, when you're actually doing this internal practice, you tend to also feel other people's feelings. So you'll know who to open up to and who not to open up to.
Exactly.
So I actually like that. Yeah.
Well, discretion goes out the window with trauma. We tend to not have a high level of discretion, which is why we continually attract traumatic events. So when you become more intimate with yourself and you embody who you are and you're more deeply connected to your body, that level of discretion goes up, intuition heightens, your antennas are kind of refined, and you tend to attract much better experiences. And it just takes time and practice.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to check whether we have any more questions from our viewers. I think everyone is a bit shy. Oh, there's one more. Okay. She says, thank you. Thank you, Kerry. We'll let you know about the journaling. So that's good.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, before we close up, I think our talk went quite long, and I knew that when I was actually putting all of these questions together. I said 3 questions is going to be too little. 5 questions also going to be too little because it's quite a broad,
it's a broad
topic. Yeah. So maybe I will actually ask my my group whether they would actually like something more about this topic in the future. Yeah, and we could do this again. And before we close, can you share your links with the viewers? And if you also have any tools that you would like to share with them, whether it's written or verbal, if you could share that with us.
Well, I think if you're a reader, try to read that book, The Body Keeps the Score, because you'll have lots of revelations. And you'll actually, I remember sighing these deep sighs of relief, like, oh my gosh, like this is why I think that way. This is why I behave that way. Because our behavior is so greatly affected by trauma. So that was a very helpful book. My website is Soul Purpose Wellness. And then my Facebook, they can just look up my name, Kerry Holzshuh, and friend me. I pretty much accept all friend requests unless the person looks super, super shady. And then I'm on Instagram as Kerry.soulpurposewellness.
Would it be possible for you to just type all of that in the comment section?
Absolutely.
So it'll be easy for them to actually look for you. Okay,
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. I thank you so much for this opportunity. You're doing amazing work. I think that women helping women, women healing women is so important as that divine feminine rises. And I'm just so glad, you know, there's definitely somebody up above that connected us. So I'm very grateful.
I actually do agree because I mean, when I initially thought about this, it was just, as I said, it was a light bulb moment when I thought about it. And I put this group together. But then I also thought to myself, it's Women's Month and it'll be nice for women to come together to support each other, help each other. And because I know normally women are, although we know we are actually the same in so many ways, but we're still very threatened by each other. We're not sure why. I have to get someone to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I thought this is actually a very good platform to show each other that we're all in the same boat, even with this old pandemic as well. We all are here for each other, and we should just show love, respect, and support to each other, and also to the men as well. And that is why I actually thought of actually having these talks on my page, and we should not isolate them because they also need this as much as us.
Absolutely. Mental health is a universal thing.
Yeah.
Trauma's universal. I often say nobody really gets out alive. I mean, we really don't ever get out alive, but we don't, most people incur suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's a commonality, then I'd like to continue to work towards breaking the stigma for men and women, and having these harder discussions, because it's necessary. It's really necessary work.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you once again, Kerry. And
Thank you so much.
yeah. Before we go, just to let our viewers know, you're going to be on my Facebook group teaching a yoga session on how to release trauma. That'll be
Yes.
on Wednesday at 6 o'clock South African time. But I will
Yes.
share the links to my to my group if you're not already on that.
Okay,
And
perfect.
yeah, yes, and also
Perfect.
if you unable to attend that session, the replay will be available, so you can always go on to it. But
Perfect.
thank you so much, and also share the page, share the pages, share the groups, and show some love.
Thank
Thank you so much, Kerry.
Love
Bye
to
bye.
all. Be well. Bye bye.
Bye.